on what wood, or what's everybody's favorite finish. A lot of questions on how to apply it, when to apply it. You put it on when the piece is turning. What's your favorite finish? What's food safe, what's not food safe? One thing I could add is there's a place in Saskatoon called Wood Essence. They sell a lot of instrument finishes, and they sell Osmo and all sorts of other stuff there too. Just check them out in Saskatoon. They ship out here for whatever dollar value, they'll ship for free. So check that out. Is there any questions specifically on finishes? But it's going to be quick.
Wood Essence also has a really good selection of color dyes, liquid color dyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've used their dyes in lots of stuff, like in guitar building, and they're color fast. They're good. They mix easy. They don't blot, and they're a good source for good shellac that's fresh. So shellac flakes, you can get it from I think 5 or 6 different colors. Not that it makes a huge difference, but if you're making your own finishes with shellac, it's good. And shellac is a nice intermediate type thing between the wood. You put shellac on the wood, it'll bond to the wood, and everything will bond to shellac. So it's a good way of sealing pores in the wood.
I had a question, but that sort of ties into it. I was wondering more about sealers, and videos I watch, people are using denatured alcohol, and I've heard shellac as well, but I'm just not quite sure. When is it required? Is it a must? Like up till now, I haven't used it. I just go and use, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know what people use for sealers. Like the sanding sealer, which is basically shellac anyhow. So.
And that's correct. Shellac is basically, sanding sealer is
Speak up,
denatured alcohol and shellac flakes.
Where do you get denatured alcohol?
In Canada, if you go and ask for denatured alcohol, they'll look at you like you're from Mars.
Yeah,
but
I know.
if you go into Canadian Tire or Home Depot and ask for Enter Plus furnace fuel, it's 100% denatured alcohol. It's ethanol, not methanol. If you go to a hardware store, they'll try and sell you methanol.
Yeah, so
Methanol is very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
Ethanol is like whiskey, but they denature it so that you're not supposed to drink it. But ethanol is smokeless fireplace fuel, and they sell it by the gallon for about $12. I've got a gallon that I've had for like 4 years. It lasts a long time.
Yeah.
You can make a lot of shellac.
Providing that lid is closed.
As long as it's closed, yeah.
Because it evaporates.
It'll evaporate.
So it's still food
It's
safe.
just
then,
like
too.
Well, it's ethanol.
If it's ethanol, yeah, exactly.
For your gas stove.
Yeah.
Another place to buy.
You don't
is,
ever use
also
methanol, like Bert says.
No,
You will die
Yes.
from methanol.
Well, it's a high
Yeah,
friction
it's a paint store.
Oh, okay.
fire.
Yeah.
It gets absorbed into your body and it hurts your livers.
Yeah, methanol is extremely dangerous. I come from industry where we use it all the time in hydrate removal and stuff. The safety precautions for dealing with methanol are extremely stringent, and most people don't even realize it. It'll go directly through your skin. And once it's in and does damage to your liver, you're screwed. Like it's a friend of mine in Calgary passed away about 12 years ago, and that's what he died from, because he was mixing a bunch of stuff and using methanol, and it went through his hands. And it took him about a year, and he was dead.
Yeah.
So
A lot of
ethanol
taxi
is
girls
different.
years ago
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
dying from that too.
Yeah.
So that's one finish, is like friction finish. It's shellac.
I use 50 or 1 part each of denatured alcohol, shellac, and boiled linseed oil.
Okay.
So you get Zinsser's clear shellac. So it's unwaxed, dewaxed shellac. It's clear. If you buy it at Home Depot, that's, I forget what the cut is on that. But if you take 1 part of that, 1 part of ethanol, and 1 part of boiled linseed oil,
Yeah.
and then you mix the 3 together, that gives you a poor man's friction polish. And I use that all the time. For general purpose stuff, it works really, really good. It gives you a nice, quick finish, and it's basically boiled linseed oil with shellac. So, and then you can put anything, once it's cured, you can put anything else on top of it.
Okay, that was my next question.
So as it's spinning, you hold a rag on it and it
Yeah.
heats up.
Yeah.
So it cures basically on the lathe as it's turning.
Okay.
And like Bert says, you can put anything over that.
And you can
use it
put
as a
wax
sealer.
or you can put
Yeah.
poly or whatever.
Once it's cured, you
Once
can
it's
put
cured.
anything on top of it.
Okay.
Has anybody ever tried the isopropyl alcohol with the shellac thing?
Isopropyl alcohol, when you buy it, it's about 60%. So the other 40% is water. So
But
that,
you can get 99% isopropyl,
Yep.
oh, well,
because that's what I use.
well, then, yeah, you can get it.
Has anybody tried mixing the shellac flakes with it? Does it work?
I've never used isopropyl. It'll work if it's 100%.
Yeah.
Most of the isopropyl you buy has a percentage of water.
Yeah.
And methyl hydrate also has a percentage of water, but ethanol first is.
Isopropyl won't hurt you like methanol. That's the difference.
Any alcohol that you get, even if it's 100%, it's, once it's open, it's going to start pulling in moisture.
You can get 4 bottles at Costco, it's 99%.
Yeah, if it's 99%, then you're good. Yeah.
It's a lot easier to get than. I don't use shellac, so I'm just curious. Is anybody
That's
ever
great
tried it?
stuff, actually, when you think of what it can do as a sealer and to get other finishes with one a flake on wood or whatever, the shellac will seal it, and then you can put anything over that.
So when you're saying fresh shellac, the stuff that I've had in the jar for the last 15 years,
It's probably still good.
it's just in flakes.
If it'll, oh, you mean the flake stuff?
Yeah,
If it's in flakes, it's fine.
it's fine.
It
It
doesn't
doesn't start polymerizing until you mix it with ethanol and expose it to atmosphere. Then it starts to polymerize. But if it's still in flakes, it's good.
If you go to mix up a batch of shellac and it doesn't ever dissolve, it's done. And I had some too that I mixed and I was trying to get it to dissolve and it just never did. It was maybe a half of that dissolved, so I pitched it and I did some wood essence. Then they buy it in huge containers and then portion it out and sell it. So,
Say the one sealer that Jimmy Police had mentioned to us years ago was Inser's sealer. And I know the one place that's, if you go to any place that does board, that's a commonly used sealer for hardwood floors. So they'll get it in.
thing with anything that you buy, like especially Zinsser, it has silicone in it, and it's used to help it dry and cure as it dries. So if you ever go back and you want to retouch that finish, you can't. It won't take. It won't help. So it's like in instruments, guitars or some violins and things like that. You never ever use silicone based or silicone additive in this shellac.
It'll usually turn white.
Yeah, it'll turn milky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So using that on part of the surface, if you want color to adhere, like to other parts, like
Yeah, like if
this, recommend it.
you can tint the shellac when you spray it or put it on by hand or whatever, or you can just shellac the piece and then tint your finish. And the dyes from, I think they're called Color Fast or something, from the folks in Saskatoon, that they mix with it, and they've got a wide selection of dye, and it's. I took a couple of guitar building courses, and the guys swear by the stuff from Wood Essence.
Why is white on poly better than just full strength?
The white on poly dries quicker than just normal poly, and I don't know what other additives are in there. But it also gives you a shiny finish. Like it all depends what you want to.
Depends on how many coats you put on.
Yeah, and you can always dull the finish if you want to. Where you use a Scotch-Brite pad, cut it back. I don't know. Does anybody know why white on poly came to be?
I think the regular brush-on stuff, in my experience, is too thick. So you're more likely to get bubbles and stuff like that. But the white bond, it goes so thin For birch, I usually use 3, very occasionally 4 coats. And it's very reliable, very predictable.
Like my herbs, I usually put on about 7 coats if I use white one.
And you can be all bucket after you're done too. And that'll make it nice and shiny. Unless, of course, you've got the satin white.
How long does it take for the wipe-on poly to cure? Like I know it dries to
Oh,
the
the
touch, but
first
to cure.
few coats doesn't take very long because the wood absorbs it so much, and that's why it takes more coats. But if you, after say 3 coats, if you sand it with 600 or 1200, then it helps to seal the wood better. And then when you put on the other coats, it isn't absorbing anymore.
It's building up.
Yeah.
When you say it cures pretty quickly, is that measured in minutes or hours?
Oh,
or
yeah,
days?
like I would say 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So I let mine sit about 3 hours between coats. And I take broken bandsaw blades and just cut a chunk and bend a triangle or a diamond out of it and turn it upside down so the little teeth are facing up. And when I put it on, then I stick it on top of that. Then when I come back, I'll rough the surface with a little 4-0 steel wool, and that'll give a little tooth for the next coat. So you put the fruit. You can tell as you're putting it on. The first coat just soaks right in, especially in. You let it dry anyway. I let it dry about 3 hours or even overnight, depends if I'm in a hurry. And then I go back and it's no longer tacky at all, and I can put some tooth on it with 4-0 steel wool and put on the second coat. You can tell it doesn't soak in quite as much, and by the third coat it doesn't really soak in, it just stays on the surface and it's shiny. And after that you can build up the depth of the shine, as Ken says. It's up to you how many coats you want to put on. But 3-4 hours is typically what they say on the label, and giving it some tooth with the 4-0, and then you got to wipe it off, right? So you don't get the little rust spots on it. But it's a very easy to apply finish.
Have you tried Scotch-Brite pads?
You know, I have, and I got the really fine ones. I think they're the gray ones. And I wasn't as happy with those. I thought they left scratches. And
Have
the
you tried the
4-0
white
steel
ones,
wool, there's little tiny bits of steel wool everywhere, so I got to wipe it off with a cloth or blow it off with compressed air. But it's very reliable. And then if you buff it with BL system, you have a very glossy piece.
Have you tried the non-abrasive pads? The ones that are the white ones that you get from
I got
Bel Air?
the white ones and the gray ones. I got the finest stuff I could find on Amazon.
Oh, these are not, Bel Air sells them and they're specific, they're non-abrasive. They do not have an abrasive, and it looks like the same weave and it's white,
Yeah.
but there's no abrasive in it, and it works like a paper towel. It scuffs like 4,000 grit or something. So if you
Yeah, I'll
scuff
have
the
to
finish,
try
it'll
that.
actually scuff the finish, but there's no abrasive in it.
You just need some tooth, that's all.
Yeah, I think 4,000 might be a little too fine because you want that mechanical adhesion. Anything that gets super hard, you want to have both a chemical and a mechanical adhesion. So trying to find something that's going to give you a 400 or 600 grit scratch is going to give you, your next layer is going to sit on there much better than having it just super fine.
And you asked about cure time. I think it's, you know, it dries in what I said, 3-4 hours, but cure, probably a week to 2 weeks,
Okay,
maybe a little longer. And then most finishes, if they dry, unlike oil. And there is oil, it's a quote Danish oil in white poly. Most oil finishes like that, according to the literature I've read that are plastic, they will cure and be food safe, in say 2 weeks or a month or something. They're all like that, if they cure properly. But I'm not a fan
Once they
of
evaporate,
oil
then
linseed oil because it just seems to take forever to dry. If I want something that's for sure food safe, mineral oil, like on a cutting board or something, that's not going to hurt us.
Yeah, mineral oil and wax.
That's what covers on little gummy worms and stuff. It's mineral oil, so it helps if you're a little
That
bummed
don't
up.
hurt you. So.
Yeah, it helps if you're a little bummed up.
Thanks for that tidbit.
Yeah, works for Bob.
A little bit of carnauba wax in there doesn't hurt either.
No, that's on the chocolate bars,
Yeah,
carnauba
yeah.
wax.
All edible.
So Bel Air, like was being talked about, I don't know if everybody's been there or not. They don't give anybody a deal, so don't ask for one. But they're just off Fort Road in northeast Edmonton. And they have, well, that's their business finishes, so.
And they've always
And
given us,
abrasives.
they've always given us a deal. Every time I've been there, we tell them,
Yeah, I think
we
we've-
tell them we're with the Edmonton Woodturners, and they give us like either 5 or
That
10%.
was that rascally Bill went in there and twisted their arms.
No, well, no, I've been dealing with them for a couple of years, and you go in and tell them you're with the Edmonton Woodturners, and I don't know if it's 5 or 10%. It's probably it is what it is, but it's a deal. It's not, may not be the greatest deal, but yeah, they've always given them.
But
a
their
deal.
prices are good to start with, like,
So it's Bellaire.
Yeah.
And it's sort of straight north of the old Coliseum. But it's a bit of, you gotta get in the right way.
yeah.
It's kind of
And you
hidden.
gotta be able to figure out how to get out too.
It's a little hard to find, but it's worth it.
Is it
Yeah, it's worth
it.
by that Fort Hotel up in there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, not far from there,
A little bit north of that.
within staggering distance of the
But yeah, it's a little bit difficult to find, but their specialty is finishes, and they've got a lot of good stuff. I used to use them in Calgary as well. So if you're looking for any of the lacquers and various types of stuff like that, that's where you get it. It's a little bit pricier, but it works.
They
So-
got the good nozzles.
Yeah, they got the, like I say, it works. So I don't mind paying $1 or $2 more for something that works,
Yeah.
because then you get the
Like those-
benefit.
That Jeff out of the States, which we can't get in Canada anymore, but their nozzles, you would never ever get a run up from it. You know, they were superior. And people tell me Bel Air has that type.
Oh, that's good.
I like them because they got 2 different spray nozzles you can use. You can change it, so that you got a wide spray and a narrow spray, and you just change it on for whatever project you're working. So
Oh,
to me, that's a benefit. That's a reason why maybe they charge a little more. It's a good product, and they make it for commercial people, so time is money for them, and they don't want to waste product.
So I have a question, talking about nozzles and everything. Has anybody tried out the Fuji high volume, low pressure HVLP turbine blowers for finishing? And then is there an advantage to using a turbine blower or an HVLP air powered sprayer?
I think you get superior finishes with the sprayer, but I just have never bothered because of the hassle. But when I was in construction all my life, and the painting companies using, like, it is perfect. But I just didn't want the hassle of cleaning stuff.
Yeah.
The one recommendation I make, I used to paint cars for a living, and the one thing I'd really recommend is know your product. Like, if you do not have good airflow, don't spray it inside. If you don't have outside air coming into a mask, don't use it. You use the product once, and you can be ruined for life. Like, it's that serious. So, if you really, like, do your homework before you start spraying stuff, and make sure you're set up for it with that. Ideally, a downdraft booth that takes stuff, exhaust it right out of your shop.
That would be
Yeah,
nice.
like, a good way though is to have your exhaust fan have a hole in the wall and spray in front of it, and no fumes will be in the enclosure. They'll be all outside. A fella that did furniture making in South Calgary, he had that set up, and that's where I first saw it, and it's superior. There is no fumes in the, like what Brian McAvoy used to do. He had an overhead door on the one side of his L-shaped shop, and then he would cover his lathe bedway and put all his pieces on there, have big fans sucking out the door, and spray with lacquer, and you'd never smell anything.
That's a lot of air to go through.
Yep.
Ted, I've had a brand called Turban Air for many years. And of course, by the name, it has a turbine to it to supply the air. It's been a good machine, but I don't use it for like small projects, just like cabinet work and that type of thing. Too much work cleaning it up after you're.
Yeah, because like the Fuji stuff, they have I think their smallest is a double turbine, and then you go up to 6 wheels on a turbine for air. So you're moving a lot more air, and you can run a bigger nozzle, but I think they start out at $650 and go up from there. So I don't know what would a person use for a gun for running with compressed air, like how much would that cost, or what's a good brand?
I've got a cheap, one of those air ones there, I bought from Busy Bees, and you can't get any cheaper than that.
Yeah.
And I use it for recoating lawn furniture. Works like that.
I've got one from Busy Bee too, and it was like $20 or something. It's just a small one, right? A small little canister, and I've done furniture with it too, and guitars and stuff. It's small pieces. It's fine.
Princess Auto has them too.
Yeah.
The thing I like about it is you use latex paint in it, and you don't have to pin it or nothing. One I have anyway.
That's the problem with the turbine ones. You have to dilute like 50-50 to spray latex. So
It should come with a little cup that you fill,
Yeah.
and it has a hole at the bottom, and you time how long it takes to empty that, and that tells you whether you've got it fit into the right.
It's just called a viscosity cup.
Yeah, so it depends what kind of paint you're dealing with. Comes with different needles for about 5 different size needles and seats. So gives you a chart. You know, paint with lacquer. Here's what you use. Kind of different things.
my daughter's told me that I need to get one of these two systems. So she's not putting any money in.
Oh,
Bird knows her. So
just tell her you're getting a Wagner power painter.
yeah, I've got one. I should give it to her. That's the worst thing I ever bought.
A high volume, low pressure. You don't get the high mist because you don't get a bounce back from it.
Yeah.
And you could spray on this table and spray the whole table. By the time you were done, there might be a little trace on the floor that you're going to see. But it's totally different world than using a high pressure sprayer.
Because you can get the HVLP sprayers, right?
Yes.
But then I think they're still running about 25 psi or something like that.
I don't know what the actual pressure is. There's no way to measure it or anything.
Because each one tells you, or they list what pressure it works best at, and they're quite low.
See, this comes with the turbine or whatever, and
Well,
you just have a very
no, I'm
discrete
talking
dial.
about the compressed air,
Yeah.
HVLP gun.
There again, you got to regulate it down to how do you get the volume once you do that. That's, I don't know how.
Yeah, it's
I have no
totally different
experience with
gun.
those, but
You're in with a ready gun.
yeah.
Because that's definitely not chocolate. It's back to the pressure.
Yeah.
Regulated by something else.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions on finishing, or?
I have a question on Purple Heart. Has anyone worked with Purple Heart, and if so, what did you use as a finish?
What do you want to do to it?
Finish it.
Finish?
Yeah, have you used finish on?
I've used lots of different finishes.
Anything.
What works best?
Like one poly and tongue oil.
Yeah.
And,
Don't expect it to stay purple.
Nope.
Never done.
People use heat on it.
What's that?
A flame on Purple Heart to
yeah. But they will fade over time.
Yeah, it reaches, it turns brown, brown hard.
Yeah.
But if you sand it, it's purple again, so. Yeah, it don't make any sense to. Are we done with the finishing questions? I think we are. So I'd like to thank everybody who made it out to Wayne and Sharon's place for their first crack at the garage sale or whatever. There's a lot of good stuff went out of there. I even bought a little bit. Some people actually have to call their husband to come with the truck. I take their booty, but
Lost the email, unfortunately.
And further to that, some of the wood that Wayne had. This stuff here is pretty dry. Some of it came out of the attic in his garage. It's been up there for over 12 years. So it's real nice and dry. And it's pretty solid. It's got some nice, pretty colors and stuff. And,
He's wondering if it was apple.
oh, I'm not sure what it is.
It looks like
But
there's
anyway,
salt pipes in there.
They said we'd bring some samples here, so everybody's welcome to grab some and take it home. Turn something and take a picture of it, and we'll send Wayne a picture of what you turned out of a piece of his wood.
yeah, he thought that was a pretty cool
I think
idea.
that's a good idea, because he's I don't know if you've heard, but he's in the Norwood Center, so he's in extended care, and he's doing well. He's a lot happier now than he was a month ago. And things are looking pretty good for him. But anyway, when we told him we were going to bring this stuff to the guild and have everybody take a chunk and make something out of it, he thought that was a heck of a good idea. He'd like to see what people make. Whether it's a weed plot or a pile of shavings, pile of bark, doesn't really matter. He's a woodturner, so he'd love to see it. So you're welcome to grab some and take them home.
We suggest that we get these out tonight and have something back here by next meeting and have a group picture for them.
That would be great if we could
Yeah.
do that. Take something and then whatever you turn, bring it back.
Whoever takes a piece, make something from it.
We'll take a
Bring
group
it back
picture
next
and
week,
send it
this
to him,
month.
because I'm sure he'd really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So one other thing, Stu and Bert had some prototyping of a better way of hooking our lathes onto our stands so that we can get some courses going on mentoring, I shouldn't say courses, mentoring sessions going. So we've done the one lathe, and it's stuff that we can do here to the other 5 that are left over. Before you had to lift the lathe up, it was top heavy, you wanted to spin around. Then you had to lay on the ground, put bolts in. It was not the best deal for safety, so we've come up with something new, and we'll get those lathes fixed up, and hopefully within the next month we'll run our first mentorship thing, and failing that, we'll try for something during the summer. If we can get the 6 people, we'll go.
Yeah, if I could just ask if we can get a little bit of help to do the other 5 lathes, it would be nice. We're not sure when we can, so we got to get them over the back here, and they're a little plugged up in here right now.
Yeah.
But when we do get to having to finish them up, it would be nice to have a few extra hands, because we got to take each lathe apart from the stand that it has and do some drilling and make sure the bolts line up and everything, and kind of put it together a bit. But it's not a lot of work, but an extra pair of hands would certainly make it easier and go quicker. Bert and I got it down pat for pretty much the one that we did, and it's not a lot of work really. It's just to be able to get there and get the stuff down and take it
We'll
apart.
figure out a date that would work for you and Bert, as soon as you're the experts now, and then I'll send out an email to
Okay.
everybody.
Yeah, we'll find out. We'll figure out when we can do it.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that'd be great.
I can give you a hand, Stu.
Okay.
Just let me know.
Sure. Okay, well, we don't need a lot, you know, if we got 2 or 3 people, that'd be great, we get her done quick.
So if we have enough time after the show and tell, Jeff is gonna give us a quick demo on some pieces for inside-out turning. We're not gonna turn it on the lathe, we don't have time, but, kind of go through.
Yeah, I think somebody, I don't know who had asked me how we did the inside out turning, and Ken will remember this, and he said, oh, how do you do that, Jeff? I went, it's jeepers. it was a good explanation. I mean, even I was confused at the end of it. So I decided that the best thing to do would be to kind of do a mock-up. So it might end up to be a mess up or whatever. But anyway, I've got some pieces. And it's just scrap wood, 2x2s, just to try and explain the process. And I'm pleased Ken's here because we talked about how to hold the pieces together, and Ken said he used hose clips. And I go, well, that's kind of a neat idea, so I've tried that, just as a starter.
Why don't you just get Ken to do that?
That's right, it is, yeah. Yeah, I've got the wood there, he can explain it all. Pretty good idea. Well, it's good that he's here because at least now I've got some backup.
You got your back. Someone's got your back.
Especially when I start talking real limey stuff and we're all in trouble.
So I'd also like to thank Bert for all the time he's put in for the last millennium that he's been in that position. Kept us going through the COVID times with the woodshed, and we had lots of fun with that. We had folks from Montana out to BC joining in on every month, or no, it was every week there. Every month. Yeah. And that was great. That kept their folks engaged and in the loop, and got to talk with a lot of people from a lot of places, and from Saskatoon, northern BC, the island. It was great. So, done an excellent job as vice president, and we look forward to more work for you, Bert. Your pay will remain the same.
It's the same as probationary, Al. In case you're wondering.
Yes, Al will be starting off at the same rate that you were getting. So
yeah. We'll just transition.
Different account. Okay, shall we start off with the show and tell?
Let's get a crack in.
Or do you want to do your demo first, because I know you're all nervous about this?
Either, whatever.
I think we should do the show and tell, because there's a lot of items and we want to.
There's a lot of items to get through.
Let us go.
Who's
Who
up
wants to
first?
start off on the end here?
This should be second.
Glenn Christensen.
Is it
His piece.
this one?
Yeah. And then one up
And
on
then
the
Ken.
Okay, so we'll jump into this. Okay, I have two things here. A few years ago, Ed Pretty from Vancouver showed us how to do, or he had acrylic gel transfer on some of his larger works. So I tried it with a map from National Geographic. So it's plastic on one side. Just put the acrylic gel, put one coat on the plate here. Actually, the plate was really crappy because it had cracks all the way through, but if you look on this side, you can't really see them anywhere. So slapped it down. You just use a little bit of water on a cotton cloth, and you basically remove the paper, and it leaves the ink with the acrylic gel, and it stays there. Obviously, this one is reversed. I didn't take the time to do. If I had taken a PowerPoint, flipped it, did a reverse, and then printed it, then you can get the positive, but this is negative, and it didn't really matter. But it was the first time I tried it, so I thought, and acrylic gel, you can get that at any, like any art place, Michael's, whatever. So
does it dry, or is it just a medium to transfer?
Nope, it dries. It's just like acrylic paint that has no color in it. So you just put it down on the surface you want and put it onto your paper. Photocopy works best. And then just, while they're damp, put them together. And you burnish them with the back of the spoon to get your air bubbles out. Once it's good dry, just use a damp cloth, and you can take the paper off, and you're left with your ink. So it's kind of easy. And this one was in that filing cabinet. There's one from the British woodturning, whatever that one is called. But so was this type? This type of plate. I thought I wanted to do something to put my own spin on it. So what I did was I did a hidden little little cartridge that's in here. This is all just kept together with 2 magnets, or 4 magnets all together. And then I cut the bottom at an angle so it sits at a little bit of a different slope. So it's got a small, just a small bowl, whatever. And I'm trying something different here. I'm trying to get people to, instead of count their lives in years, I am 782 months old. That's how many times I've seen this. So, seen a quarter moon. So that's that's my. But that's just wipe on poly on top of. And this is just airbrush. The black is just airbrush acrylic, and I just wiped it on, and I didn't spray it or anything like that. And then just put wipe on top. So that's my 2 pieces.
That sounds good.
Ken, you got something here?
Yeah. I've done quite a bit of piercing over the years, as some of you know, and I just keep playing and coming up with different pieces. I created a lamp in this instance, and still use the same procedures, turn them thin and embellished leaves with dentist drill to create the veins and everything in them. And this is a new attempt using acrylic paint, and I did it by hand, not with an airbrush. And it's amazing how you can blend acrylic paints. As long, like if you lacquer before you start painting and then spray, and it breaks down the composition of the colors too, the lacquer, and helps to blend everything.
Did you airbrush the one from last month? Did you airbrush the one from last month, or was that one?
No, that one was my first attempt, and it's in the gallery in Sherwood Park, and so I made another one just to show people because I didn't bring that other one that particular time. Yeah. And this is, if you can believe, a week ago, this was kind of a green colored urn. I didn't like it for a long time, so I changed it. And just by using 4 different dyes and sanding in between, and way the box elder will absorb the different colors in different ways. And yeah, you can just keep playing until you're happy. But it's it involves a lot of applications and sanding, but you can come up with some pretty unique colors and more eye appeal. Yeah.
So when you're dyeing the wood, you just do it in different sections? And then how do you blend that in?
No, I cover completely each dye.
Okay.
But then I sand, like I'll put one on. I'll maybe start with yellow. And of course, if you go from yellow to blue, you're going to get green.
Free of charge.
And so then it isn't a wise thing to do if you don't like green. But yeah, and the red and the blue work good with the orange to give you a different look.
It's very nice.
When you were saying you were lacquering and it blends the dyes, does that mean like there's a chemical reaction with the lacquer that actually affects the dyes?
Yeah, like if you get acrylic paint for airbrush in the orange. If you spray lacquer on your piece and then paint it with the orange, and then as soon as you finish painting, paint over again with lacquer, and what'll happen, it'll break down the composition of the orange and you get the other colors. Like, I don't know, some of you guys have saw some of my maple leaf ones that I did in orange, but if you look at them closely, it's got all 3, 4 different colors, and people, they think you've done, but I just learned it as an accident, and no one else knows basically how it arrived, you know, but that's, pardon?
So the color separation is really nice.
Yeah.
I've tried it, and I just end up with brown.
Well,
Brown, yes.
yeah, like I use Mohawk dyes. They're very expensive, but I think for a quart they're, it's bigger than a pint, and it isn't a quart either, but they're about $80, and that was 10 years ago.
Are those alcohol-based dyes?
Yeah. Yeah. You can get them at Benjamin Moore on 91st Street South, just before you get to 34th Street on the east side of the street.
Ken, what's your preferred thickness for piercing?
For piercing, well, the ideal is not a 16th, but a little bigger than a 16th, you know. I don't know if it'd be 2 mils. But if you get up much more than that, you get, it doesn't matter how good bits you have, it'll tend to burn. And then if you get burned, you can get rid of, it's amazing how many people like the burn look. But you can, by reversing, like you cut one way, and then if you go backwards, you can get rid of the burn. But it's a big, you know, involves a lot of working. But if I found with turning, if you get down to a 16th or less, when you turn it green, when it dries, it'll likely crinkle. It isn't structurally sound enough to get that thin right from the start. So if you get under an 8 and then let it dry in a cardboard box, and then when you take it out and put it back on, rechuck it and sand, you can get to that final point that is good for piercing. You know what I'm saying, Ben?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
Whose bowls are these? Cracked?
You gotta turn it soft and wet green or you won't do it. Yeah, like if you use dry wood, I don't care how good your hands are or your boring system, it'll chatter and it could blow apart. You can do within reason if you leave lots of body and just maybe go a quarter, half in at a time and leave that heavy, thick body behind and just keep working your way. But you can't take, say, a quarter-inch off, then another quarter and work your way down. It'll blow apart. But if it's soft and wet green, water's just flying out of it, it'll take the movement.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
This nested bulls here, who belongs to
Those are mine.
I was gonna auction them off.
That's okay.
When do you wanna start the video?
So, yeah, these are just poplar, but my finishing question is, this is Osmo finish.
It looks great.
Pardon?
It looks great.
Does it?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm happy with it. It's just that I'd like it to be a little more shiny. The can says it's food safe, so that I'm happy with. But, I don't know, to me there should be a little bit more shine to it. Is there something else that
How many coats do you have on?
3, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, put 3 on it, trying to build it up.
You can actually put wipe on over top.
But then it's not food safe then, right? Unless it
Oh, yes,
cures
it
for
is.
30 days.
The
or
moment it
something.
evaporates, it's food safe.
Is it? Yeah. That's what I was wondering.
So I wonder, Jerry, if you take the VL, probably the white and the carnauba to it, when you shine it up that way, because Osmo is a hard oil, so it's probably waxy. And you should be able to shine it up by putting something like carnauba wax, which is harder still.
Harder still.
I would guess, I've tried a little one.
Yeah. I'll try that.
And don't do the red stuff, that's too coarse. I would just maybe do the white double diamond, whatever it is.
Yeah,
and
white diamond.
And then go to the carnauba.
Would that white double diamond, would that still be food safe?
It's gonna buff off, it's mostly wax.
Is it?
With a little bit of abrasive in it.
Okay.
And the red stuff is a wax, but it's got a lot coarser abrasive in it, just like any other. Or you could just go right to the carnauba wax and try to shine it up that way. Looks like a car.
Okay.
Simon acid.
The sad thing about wax, though, the downside about wax is it disappears. And if you put a piece in a sunny location, you'll go back to natural wood. You put it on the mantle of your fireplace, it all disappears, and it looks like you haven't put any finish on it.
That's why I usually.
That is the downside of wax.
But I use that wax stuff and it's turned yellow.
Okay.
It's unfairly used.
Thanks, Jerry. Let's start with this one. Gordon, Scott. That's very nice.
The Arizona natural.
Piece of mesquite from Mesa. Bought it at a firewood supply. Bought a log, probably a couple inches longer than this, and got to split it. The other piece, I reversed it the other way. Didn't like that. So 1 of 2 isn't bad. Mesquite is cheap down there. All they use it for is firewood. Thank you.
Do you have any finish on that?
There's some oil. Walnut oil.
These are these.
Bombs.
Yes. Whoops.
Got a set of cherry bowls that I burned from one piece. Poured it to get the effect through the whole thing. And I just like cherry. It's a beautiful. This is Alberta cherry, and Alberta cherry is a beautiful wood, fairly soft, burns quite nice. It doesn't distort very much when you dry it. So. And I use polyurethane, Minwax polyurethane on it. And I put a first coat on, and you can be pretty sort of easy putting it on. It can be pretty thick and it don't have problems with running. Second coat, you got to be really thin with it. You can dilute it, or you can just use it a little bit on your brush, wipe it on. And the third coat, you have to be even thinner. And if you do get any runs, which is a problem with polyurethane, you can use your chisel. So the chisel will run off and then sand it. Otherwise, just sand it when you get its lumps all over. So anyway, that's what I do.
So you have to take those runs off fairly, like within a day or so, when they're still sort of soft, or what?
within a day or so, yeah, they're pretty soft. When you come back the second day to do your sanding, if you're sanding and you find a run, and it's got a really sharp chisel, it'll just chisel it off.
Stu?
Yeah. Well, sure, if you want to tell a story about it.
We'll talk, you tell us stories.
You know, I did bring a bit of a selection for some stuff tonight because of finish. People talk about finish. But this one particular bull is my first bull that I ever turned in 1968 in high school.
Wow.
Right? I don't know if anybody keeps the first bull they have, but this one's got a lot of story to it. It's been through 2 fires. My school burned down and this was on display in the display cabinet in the school. You can check Google, Port Moody High School, 1969, burnt to the ground. And this was in a display case at the far end of the school. And we salvaged it. I got it out, I got the stuff out of the cabinet that was in there, and this is one of the pieces. But every glue joint was separated up to a 1/4 inch. And burn marks, as you can see, this black mark here is tar from the roof that dripped into the display. So it's been through hell, but I looked at it and I thought, you know, it's scrap. What am I going to do? Should I? For some reason or other, I took it home, I threw it on the bench in the basement, and it sat there for years before I even noticed that it had closed up. And it came back to pretty close to this, where it is. I took some sandpaper to take off the real dark charcoal that was stuck on there, and I left it, and it looked like a half-decent bowl, and I gave it to my mom and dad. Basically, it went in their house, in 100 Mile House. Their house got fired. Second fire. And it got some water damage, and smoke, shrunk up again. I got it back.
Where's that bowl live now, Stu?
The bowl is in my house. I don't know.
3 strikes and it's gone.
But anyway, I have it. And as you can see, the bottom is, that's how we finished it. We didn't have chucks then.
Yep.
We had a glue on. And sometimes you make a mess of taking it off, but you cover it with a piece of green felt. And there it is, there's your wall. Eh? That's what we did. But the felt burnt, so I took that off. And I was going to try and finish up the bottom. And I'd like to take it and put it on a lathe and really make a nice finish on here, but no. This is too authentic to me. It's got to stay. This is it.
Yeah.
So
Lots of memories.
that's my story about this. But the finish that I have on this was a teak oil, just a Scandinavian oil finish, and I sanded it in with 600 grit sandpaper. And I spent a lot of time on the lathe at school with it, and it looked really good. I was quite happy then, and my instructor was pretty happy with how it looked. They thought, you know, good job. Well, fine, I like that. But when I cleaned it up at home after the fire thing, I gave it one coat with some sand, with some oil again, and that's all I have put on this bowl since. There's been nothing else put on it. So I'm kind of impressed with what you can do with teak oil. But you know, it's a good piece of wood, solid teak. It absorbed it well, and it's ended up with a half-decent finish. So
It's been stress relief.
yeah.
It's stored at Jeff's house.
This one is a piece of Asdol maple. And I've done white pond poly on this. And this was done in 2018. And I think white pond poly is a pretty good general finish that pretty well everybody should probably have and use, because it's pretty successful on everything. I found that you need 3 or 4 coats on it at least, and I don't remember for sure how many this has, but I'm sure it's more than 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I think it's more like 8 or 10. Yeah, you know, you can look at it, Ken, you're familiar with it, and you can tell. But when I apply that white pond poly, I put it on so it's wet. And I just let it sit for an hour or so. And it's still on the lathe. And I buff it with paper. That's all I use is regular hand towel paper. And it cleans up really nice. I try to turn it fast so it's got some heat to it, like it really seems to, I wouldn't say burn it in, but it melts it in. I end up with a nice finish with it. I'm quite happy with how it works. But then I used Lapon for a few years, and I got introduced to Oswald. And there's a piece of Manitoba maple that's done in Oswald, and it's probably got 3 or 4 coats on it. And I do the same with this, put it on, and I should say the same. I let the Lapon pony sit for a while. But the Oswald, I put it on, and I just, I wouldn't say burn it in, but I buff it with the paper again while it's spinning as fast as I can handle it for heat, and let it sit for 24 hours, put a second coat on, and again the same thing, run it in with the dry paper towel, and go for a 3rd or 4th coat. Usually 3 will do it for Oswald. I really like Oswald finish. It does a good job. It's fine. I think it's a little more advanced than White Pond Poly, and a little easier to work with. And then I got into, this is a piece of yellow cedar burl that came out of northern Vancouver Island. It was sitting for about 25 years in a garage, so it was good and dry. My brother-in-law gave it to me. And I actually got 6 pieces out of it by coring. This is the first core out of here, and I had a couple more. And I cut a chunk off the side because it had a bad wing on it here that I couldn't do anything with. But for finish, as you can see how red it is, I couldn't believe it when I did this. It was finished, I got to lacquer it. The lacquer that I used was from Bel Air. And I sprayed it, and it instantly turned red like this. I have no idea why.
Yeah, like it looks like red cedar instead of yellow.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But here's the natural color with a different lacquer.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, the same bowl. That cord came out of there.
Some action.
Yeah, and it's the only one that I could get. What happens, I did the others with the same lacquer, and I ran out of lacquer, so I had to use a different lacquer for that one. I expected that to turn red too, and it didn't. But this color on this I thought was phenomenal. The inside was bright like this. It's unreal. I was just so excited about it. I thought that's got to be the best one I ever had. And it's become quite a conversation piece for me because it's the colors I had, and I left it as natural as I could on the outside. There was a bit of rough stuff, and I took my oscillating sander and I touched it a little bit just to take the rough corners off. And in doing that, I guess I got into the wood a little deeper than the surface. When I sprayed it, there was little accents of red. They're starting to fade out, but there's the odd piece that you can see that it just gave us a nice feature.
Yeah, you couldn't create that if you tried.
No, I couldn't. No, this is a one of a kind, and it ain't going anywhere. But no.
How long ago did you do this?
I did this one. I never did date them. I think it was about in 2018, so it's about 5 years now.
Color is held really well.
Yeah, it's done well.
You should store that in a different house than your...
No, I know exactly where it is. It's staying there. Thanks, Steve.
Firebolt when you're finishing cabinet.
I got into flood coating. Here's a piece of Manitoba maple that was a scrap piece that I flooded. I got started with this with Steve. He's been doing a few pieces of flood coat. And just some advice about doing flood coat. sand as best you can, be prepared to put 2 or 3 coats. I've never been able to do it in 1 coat. What happens is the pores will absorb, and the air's got to come out, and it leaves a little bubble, and it never finishes properly on the first coat. This has 2, and there's still little marks on it. I've left it, but I might put another coat on it yet, but
And even trying to use the heat gun for the bubbles, it doesn't help.
no, it doesn't. That will dissipate the bubble immediately, but they come back. And it leaves a little indent. Well, you can see it. You look really close on it, Ken.
Yeah.
They're not bubbled up there.
Yeah.
It absorbs it, and it is the flood coat going into the wood, and it just leaves that divot. But a second or a third coat, the second usually seals it up. Third pretty much does it. So if you want it to look totally like glass, be prepared to put 3 coats.
How do you do your flood building procedure?
And how I do it, in this particular one, I still had the foot on the bottom. I had it on the lathe, and I turned it on the lathe while it was drying, slow speed. Because it, surprisingly, the flood, as thin as you can put it on, like that, this was brushed on with a brush. And as thin as you put it on, it will still run. If I let it sit, it would have a bubble.
Yeah.
Okay? So I kept turning it, and I took the extra off whenever I possibly could with the brush, and then torch it, and it comes out smooth. It doesn't leave a brush mark or anything. And if you keep it turning for probably about 2 or 3 hours, it's probably enough. It will take the run. And I did the same thing with
So that's an epoxy, right?
that one. Sorry?
Is that epoxy?
Yeah, flood coat epoxy. Yeah, UV epoxy. And it's not hard to work with. You gotta have patience and try to put as little on as possible. A flat surface, it'll flood nice, be good. But if it's on the side or anything like that, it'll run off. So that's why I would keep it turning.
Just as slow as you can go.
Yep. Yeah, I had the lathe on the slowest speed. I've heard of guys making a turning device out of a barbecue motor. And I haven't done that yet. I've just been using it on my lathes, and it's not chucking it. It worked fine for me. But, you know, if you can't get your lathe turning slow enough, that might be something for you to look into. And this was flood coat also, an apple root burl. This took me a long time to do this. This thing is you know, it's like ironwood. It's tough as hell, and it was a hard turn. And this cavity that was in here was a lot of work. There's a lot of handwork done on this one, but I figured the only way to finish this is flood. And I didn't turn it on the lathe. I used my power arm, that bracket, that little vise thing that I've got that I can rotate it with. And what I did is I did it in sections. I did the inside probably first, and I had to sit in one position. I didn't turn it so it would run down. So then I would sand that piece off and make sure that got cleaned up. And then I went at it again with some more, and flipping it over, well, I had to take the foot off, and I just left it sitting up like this and brush it on real light so I could finish the bottom. The rest of it was all done on the power arm. And the coloring was my choice of just flood coat, and then I just added a little bit of gold fleck and brushed it around, and it ended up with a nice accent. But
Beautiful.
more flood coat. I'm not afraid to do it, and you know, anybody can. It's not hard. It's very forgiving. It fills scratches quite well, and
Where do you get that flood coat?
I got mine from Windsor Plywood.
The epoxy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's where I bought it.
When are you gonna do a course on it?
I don't know, what's this?
In the fall.
Steve? What is there to do? I mean, you mix 2 pieces of epoxy together and wipe it on, and you know,
Yeah, there's
There is.
a video of you doing this one.
I think there is, and yeah, I think we did a video, didn't we, Bert? Yeah, yeah, so if you wanted to watch that, it'll give you more of an
I
idea.
know I did a sofa table out of a burl of cottonwood from the west coast,
Yeah,
and I just used a credit card
yeah,
and
yeah.
like I had to, because of all those little pinholes in the burl,
Yep,
and like you say, it sucks it down.
It does.
And then there's a divot.
Right.
And like it took 4 or 5 coats
you gotta do
before
it
it
that
was
much, eh?
perfect.
Yeah, yeah, well, what was happening, it was closing up, or it wasn't closing up, it was, the pores were staying open,
Yeah.
so it was still coming out, the air was still coming out on the next coat until you got it to seal up. And that's the thing, is to get it to seal up.
Yeah,
Takes-
until it finally levels off.
Yeah,
How do you get rid of your bubbles then?
I use just a heat gun.
just a torch,
And,
a light.
what do you call them, those paint stripper or heat gun?
Yeah.
Same thing,
Mhm.
basically. And
Yeah.
you just don't want to get too close or else you get waves.
You just gotta glaze it
Yeah, it just,
lightly, you don't hold the torch on it, it's gotta be moving, and, a small torch is a little more controllable. Yeah, so,
If you have larger cracks or little holes too, you can use CA
yeah,
to fill them. And then once you go over with the epoxy, you
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
you'll still get a dimple if it's not completely level.
this probably has a few CA fills in it too, I can't remember. for
CA
sure, but-
glue will tend to discolor your wood if you aren't careful.
Yeah, it can,
If you're using it to fill a crack with the dust from your wood, it'll give you a different color.
But
These,
once you apply epoxy over top,
It helps,
then
but
all of that
sometimes you can
discoloration.
see it if you don't sand lots before you.
yeah, yeah. But, these colors that I have in here, the more deeper accented colors, what it is it's epoxy, and I use acrylic paint for coloring. I didn't even have the proper coloring that we use now. I just used acrylic paint to mix with the epoxy to give me this green or this red, and it was basically leftover epoxy that I was doing another job with. Might as well fill that hole. And there it sits for another month, and then I'd come back to it and that, but that's where I ended up. So, that's it. I think that's all of them. Yep.
Justin,
Who's allowed?
who's the lighting person?
The light.
Nobody else?
Who did the light?
Nobody else there?
Oh,
I mean, oh, of course, I'm lighting, yes. The lights,
yeah.
This is the latest prototype. Because my skills don't match most of the people in this room, I decided to try something very different. I started this about 8 months ago, and this is the 4th one. The other 3, as you might imagine, you go too deep, you cut a wire, and now the whole thing is basically destroyed. So, what I decided to do was to put the segments together in sections such like that and turn them to approximately the thickness that I needed to embed the LEDs, and also what I was eventually going to wind up with. Incidentally, the segments are just random. I just made segments and threw them on. I wasn't concerned about the actual pattern. Filling the holes is a bit of a problem because, as you can imagine, it's a convex shape. So they were done one at a time, and there's 6 holes in this, so that was at least 6 days of pouring. And then in order to get the convex, I waited until the solution was almost getting firm, and then just stacked it up and had to keep working at it. So if you went for a 48 light system, it would probably take you 3 years to get what I do is I bake it in my kitchen oven. I have a small in-car heater and a thermostat, and I'm able to control the heat, and that helps improve the thing. My workshop is basically not very well heated, so I have 2 big cans of the epoxy, and just the other day, I've had this stuff for about a year, and just the other day I saw this big label on the side that said the temperature you mix it at is very important. So now I'm mixing it in the kitchen. Fortunately, I live alone, so there's no howling and screaming going on. And the lighting itself, this one is a longer string, so it takes 3 AA batteries, and the system has a 6-hour switch, so if you forget to turn it off, it'll turn off after 6 hours. So as I say, this is an experiment, ongoing. Any questions?
Where does the wire run between the lights?
On this particular one, as I said, I made roughly this depth from the top to about here, and on top of the segments, I use a little saw blade, circular saw blade on the end of my Dremel tool, and I create a channel to put the wires in, and wherever possible. If I'm doing them in different elevations, it's easy to do it. It comes in, say, on the bottom of this one and goes over and down on the top of that one. And of course, the long string has 36 lights. So you have to figure out if it's going to be systematic holes or random and how many holes, because you don't want to run out of LEDs when you still got a hole that's empty. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you.
Very nice. So Jeff jumped ahead of the shiny stuff and skipped over Jim's wing stands.
Everybody's seen a wing stand. Just maple sanded to 600 and then run on the wheel system with all 3 wheels. Makes it really, really smooth.
So no other finish other than
Nope, just the carnauba waxes.
So yours up there?
A little cup.
Yep. It has that kind of signature look to it.
So I've been playing with the world of ornamental turning. This is just a little piece of giving away everything else. And I made this back in February. So I've been doing this on my CNC for a while, but I adapted a metal lathe that I got so you can do this kind of stuff. And it was a super easy adaptation. And to do this like this, yeah, forget it. Not going to happen. I don't have the skills for that. So this took maybe 20 minutes. It's a ton of fun. It's a ton of fun. So I've got all kinds of different designs I can do. I got 250 years to catch up on with ornamental turning. Using an ornamental lathe is a pain in the ass. Those guys are so patient, but they're into it. Like they like the whole mechanical stuff. I like the results. I don't, the in-between stuff. It's all computer, and a lot of people don't like that, but it's really very easy, straightforward to do. So that's birch, a little bit of wipe on poly, then I buffed it a bit. And this will be given away in about 3 days.
You don't have any trouble giving them away.
No, I made all kinds of them. So I did a bunch of videos of just samples of doing this on crappy old poplar dowel, and I stuck them on my YouTube channel so people can sort of see an example of how I adapted the lathe and how these little fly cutters do this. It's just fantastic. It's unbelievable how many different designs you can get.
How many people have looked at Jeff's YouTube channel?
So it's called Embellished Turnings.
Embellished?
Yep. So I started out slow and did a few things with the CNC as I was learning. So the first, chronologically, the first videos are kind of boring, and then I used to put music on them, and that's pretty shitty, so you just turn that down. No, I don't do that. I just talk over them. But yeah, there's some stuff there, and I'm just getting going. So when I find something interesting, I'll stick it up there and do a video on it. But now that I've made a bunch of tools with my little metal lathe, I've never had one before. Stu has one, of course, this big. With my little metal, and not the really little ones, the 7x14s, they're pretty shitty, quite honestly. This one is a little bigger.
Thanks. Keeping up with my poor little lathe.
Yeah. So with this, I can also make the steel ply cutters and stuff that I want to use with this. And once you get those made, then you're using a bit of equipment. For me, it's a ton of fun.
Look at all the money you're saving by making your own tools.
Yeah. See? Maybe I should buy a mill. Any questions? What is this? Is a fishnet sort of pattern, and it's cut with a very simple fly cutter. So what's a fly cutter? It's a spinning usually a single tooth or sometimes two tooth cutter that's often at right angles, if it's spinning like this and sticking out the side. So you can orient it so it's spinning like this or like this, depending on where you're cutting. So in some of my videos I use it this way, which is horizontal. And then you can turn on the end. That's called the rose engine, and using it like that. And you're turning it on the side like this, with this kind of motion that's more ornamental turn. So it's turning like this, like this, and just going in and out as it's cutting. I've got to do some better videos. My spindle was too close. It's too hard to get in there with a camera to see really what's going on. But it's not straightforward, but it's easy to do. And because I found a piece of software that does everything for free. Okay, I just have to work backwards to the hardware. There's a lot of people build an ornamental lathe and then they have to work forwards from that. That's that we've got.
So do you remember what life was like when you slept at night?
Actually, what keeps me awake at night is not designing this, it's designing the modifications. So that's fun.
Yeah, check out the website, that's easy. You had a question, Glenn?
Oh, he answered, Jeff answered. Yeah.
Okay, what's next down there? Charlotte?
Some empty jam jars. Yeah.
I want to know what kind of tooling she used to make those jars.
Leftover pasta jars. That's what they are. So really haven't had much of an opportunity to get to the lathe this quarter. I've had some issues with travel and with loans, but yeah, so fine. And I think this is not mash.
Tara, can you turn around a little bit so that they touch on the camera? Perfect.
Now, another mott mash. Now mash, a different shape of jar, and a little itsy bitsy cherry. So yeah, I got the baby food. I have no idea. No, it was honey. It was a honey jar. And basically, my finish is I got it at Rona. And it was for cutting boards. So basically just
It's an oil.
Cutting board oil. And it's not shiny, but so challenge for me was figuring out nice shade. I think I like this shape the best, and how it ended up being a little mushroomy. This was my first one. I don't really like the shape. It's okay. It's just the scope of it. The mass isn't quite. Yeah. Anyway, compare that to this one. No, I like this one better. It seems more up. This was more down. This one's more up.
I picked the one that has strawberry jam.
That one was different because it was a different wood, and it's a softer wood, and so I got a catch, and so I turned the catch into a circle.
How do you do the melons?
This was just two-part epoxy wood.
Elson was in a meeting in that
Oh, glass so good, please.
That takes about one
Hold it on Zoom and then any evening is good or? Yeah, no.
What's the time? It's kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is, almost everything was free.
Go wrong.
So this is my first attempt at an open segment bowl. My neighbor gave me a couple of old closet doors, and they had mahogany louvers in it. So the thickness was already pre-cut, and I just cut the segments. This is 24 segments per ring, 4-degree open. And see a lot of guys do this, and they've got this little jig, and they put one piece on at a time. I'm like, Jeff, I don't have the time or the patience for that. So, been helping my son make a boat out of HDPE pipe. We had some scraps. Of course, the pipe was round, so I had to cut a piece out, put it in a toaster oven, heat it up, make a press, flatten it down, and then I put it on my CNC and cut out the Seg Easy plate. And to my surprise, it works fantastic. When you cut your segments, you slide them in here, they wedge in, they don't fall out. I put this on my tailstock. I've got an adapter that goes on my tailstock. I just put the glue on all the pieces, put it up, and that's my press. 10, 15 minutes later, comes off, lower it up again. You can buy these Seg Easy rings. They come in different sizes. The cheapest ones are like $40 a piece. They're made out of HDPE too, but it's the sheet stuff and it's white, and you know. But I have the equipment, so I went the cheap route. And just spray lacquer for finish. That's it.
Will you do more of the holes?
Sorry?
Will you do more of the holes? Will you carry on with that? Do you enjoy it? Keep going with the holes?
It's actually easier than doing regular segmenting because you don't have to glue all the things, assemble the rings first. You just stick them in there and yeah, it's actually, I wasn't sure how well it turned out. Especially with mahogany is pretty easy to turn anyway, so. Yeah. I probably will do some more. Yep.
How do you clean the glue off that sort of comes out either edge when you're sticking it?
That was a prototype, I didn't even worry about it. But if you look at it, because the glue went on the face, So when you're looking down from the top, you don't see the glue, you gotta turn the bowl over. And I just use Type 1-3 because that's all I have. But apparently the guys that do a lot of open segmenting, they use like the white wood glue, the stuff that dries clear.
Yeah.
And they run a pipe cleaner through the holes. I was lazy.
You can get Type Bond translucent.
Yeah.
Yep.
It dries clear it.
Yep.
Grab one there.
Bob
yeah.
shop? Bob. Bob?
Bob shop.
Right beside the jar, right in front of you.
Oh, right.
Right there.
The project that I did here, I was in at my garage and looking at a magazine, a design magazine. And on the cover they had a photo of a stone vase in a Greek setting. And I looked at it and I thought, you know, that's kind of interesting. I've got to see if I can do that. So that's where the design came from. And the other challenge for me was to see how I could do with segmented, turning it down to this size. So when I did it, I was careful to watch where I cut the waste blocks off and how I held it and so on. And this, the lid for instance, I did with the waste block on this end, cut it down to a taper here. And I have a dowel. So when I had to finish this and cut the waste block off here, I simply took and put a dowel into a 2-inch thick waste block on the tail end. And then that held it, cut it off, cleaned it up. And it worked out quite well for me. The material is maple and some of Bob's Bavinga. And the finish is awesome. But the one thing that I would like to pass on to you folks is this ring that is fairly flat is 70 millimeters wide. So it's fairly thick, and I think Mike will probably know what's going to happen here already. I brought this in from my storage shed and 3 days later cut it and made the ring. And 3 days later when I walked up to the garage, there were 2 parts to the ring. The moisture content was different enough that it shrank and split. So if you're planning on doing any work with wide segments, make sure that your moisture content is down. If I do any work on that next year, the wood will be moved to my garage later in the summer and will stay there so that it gets acclimatized.
If you put it in a cardboard box and let it, and close it up, it likely won't do that.
With wood shavings in there?
No, don't use shavings unless you want mold. Like my thin turns, I never get cracks, and I just put them in a cardboard boxes, something I learned on my own. I tried sawdust and you name it, and they either mold or crack. But if you put it in a cardboard box and close it up, and if you can by any chance put multiple pieces in at the same time, they'll feed off each other and no problem.
The only problem I would have there is I would have to do all of the work within a day or two to get it all into the box at the same time. And for me, that's not like...
Yeah, no, that would make it harder. But like I was thinking for that top piece, you know,
it's just
separate from the rest of it.
It's just the wide segments. They shrink this way and then they split open. And the finish is Osmo, just 2 coats of Osmo.
Very nice.
I'll agree.
So, that's okay. You're all right.
This is Mesquite down in Arizona for the month of April. A resort that had phenomenal facilities. They had 6 lays, and so and people in the mentor. So anyway, a piece of mesquite. I wanted to keep it flat, not shiny, so there's 2 goats warming it up. That's it.
Who's next up there?
Who did the pauses?
Yeah, how about the pauses? Is
It's a piece.
Oh, he's shy, but he's coming out.
Thank you. So this vase, I think it was about over a year ago when you guys sent out a email as to where to go get some wood. That was in that gated yard down by the that soccer dome or the golf dome.
Oh, yeah.
On the south end. So
White willow.
is that what it is?
Yep.
Because I thought, well, elm, but just guessing. But I like Jeff's idea. I like the wipe on poly because it gives it a nice for a lot of my artwork. Gives it a nice finish, a nice gloss to it. And I always put about 10 coats. I do the outside first, let it sit, and I let it sit for 24 hours. And then I'll use a 2000 grit sandpaper, just dry, just to get the little bit of wood burrs that pop up on the first, I think it's about the first 3 coats. I've usually get the fibers standing up. And then after that, I just, every day, I'll wipe it on and let it sit. But I go really thin so it doesn't drip. And then I'll do the other side. So I'll do the 10 coats on the outside. And when it's already nice and shiny, then I'll go with the inside and do 10 coats. So it's a longer process. I don't know, there's probably a quicker way, but.
So I found with wipe on, if I use a decent quality foam brush, I only use the 1-inch ones. I find them at Michael's because they're fairly dense foam there. The dollar store is too cheap. I can use that for the first coat, maybe 2, and then I just use maybe 6 or 8-inch strips of cotton cloth.
I just go with the cloth.
Yeah,
the
that's
cloth
okay.
and just get it poured into one of those little
or just pour it onto a little
balls with the
skinny
tip on the ends, and just pour a little bit and just wipe it on.
So I'd fold that up into a little square, that 6 or 8 inches, and pour it onto that, wipe it on. And when Ed Prinny was out here from Vancouver, he said the next step after that, so you don't get all the bits, is talk nice to your wife or lady friend and get some pantyhose. And put your little squares of cloth inside the pantyhose, just one little square, and tie a knot. And that will keep any little fuzzies from the cotton cloth coming out.
Oh.
So then you get a smoother finish for your final finish.
Fibers come off, even though it says lid free. Yeah, you still get some.
So that's how you do it. You get some pantyhose.
I'm going to remind you, everyone here, that white willow is very toxic and it can kill you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
you told me this now.
I had a meeting a year or so ago. The fellow that was the expert on about a lot of the woods passed away here. Yeah. And he knew stuff inside out, but myself, it really bothered me. But I found if you take and put it in the deep freeze and then freeze it really well, and then take it out and turn it you have no fumes in this, no problem.
Well, my deep freeze is filled with ice shells. So do you put it in a bag, in a box, or just the log itself in the freezer, in the deep freeze?
Yeah, I just put it in a plastic bag and
Tie it up.
let it freeze. And then I had no reaction to it at all.
Oh, okay.
But it really bothers me. I was turning quite a bit of it. Yeah, it's just a warning in case something goes
As long as you're turning an urn, right?
Pardon?
As long as you're turning an urn.
For yourself. On these two pieces, I had, there was a church downtown that they had this historic 100-year-old Manitoba maple filled with burls. And I always wanted to talk to the caretaker and say, can I cut that tree down? Can I cut a couple of branches off, you know? But there was a day when it had fallen and it was, the inside was rotted. I talked to my wife and says, your husband has been bugging me about getting some of this wood. So he said, bring a chainsaw. Well, you needed about a 48-inch bar to cut this tree, to get good chunks. So with my chainsaw, I cut up a couple different nice sized chunks out of it. And I just let it sit. And this was actually last November. So the tree was probably pretty much dry, just from rotting. But so I had an awkward, you know, a couple just different square awkward pieces, and it just sat until I thought, oh, what am I going to do with it? So then when I turned it, this all stayed natural here, and then I just carved the inside out. I used white one.
Gorgeous piece of wood.
Yeah.
There's a big tree. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed on 111th Avenue, that school that's on 111th Avenue, there's a big burled Manitoba maple there. Like it's gigantic. Like, I mean, if you got that tree, you would never need wood again.
So if you look real close, Ken, you'll see my name is carved on there. That's fine.
Yeah, so this was another piece.
That is gorgeous.
So it was,
I'll take care of that.
the way the wood was cut, it was shaped like this. So it was kind of out like this. And so it was pointed more like the way it is here was pointed up here and then wider at the bottom. And you know, there's times where I put stuff on the lathe and I'm scared to turn it because I don't know what it'll come out to be. And so when I started carving this one, because it was so dry, I had to use a spray bottle and water. And every time I took a shaving, I have to spray it to keep the fiber, like the wood fibers, to get wet, so that way my carving tools can carve it out pretty good. Because otherwise, I was just constantly sharpening my tools down to pretty much nothing. So, and then I just used the palm sander and just sanded it from I went from 60 grit to 400 grit. And I liked the way that, you know, had this little rotted piece in here, and I thought, well, should I keep it or knock it out? So I knocked it out too. And then I ended up with but it was like a propeller. So, you know, you imagine, you know, when you turn it into something, and all you see is that shadow. You gotta be very careful how you angle your steady rest and your carving, because you gotta watch where that piece is around. But I like it. I got actually another piece that is kind of like square. I'm still working on that one. But this one actually took me 4 months to complete it. Carving.
Gorgeous.
You could probably put a few, you know, like legs on that this way, and then a rocker thing, and then you do a little.
A lot of my, I'll have to take a picture, but a lot of my unique vases and pieces that I've turned, I've filled, got a custom-made wall unit. I've got it all filled. My wife says no more pieces. I'll build another section of that. This ended up being just a, you know, from a log. You know, you get, when you peel off the bark, you get some unique shapes out of Manitoba. I like working with the maples. And I did that system, stuck it in shavings, and I got a little bit of mold in there, but you know what, it gives a little bit of character. And so I just figure out what you can do with it wasn't very big. And ended up turning out a nice, you know, coffee table ornament.
Yep.
So how was the lot?
It was just a round piece, peeled off all the bark. Because with maple, I find the bark, if it's wet, it'll peel off. And
It's all about when you cut the wood.
yeah,
If you cut it in the winter time, the bark will stay on. If you cut it in the summertime, there's sap in between the wood and the bark and it'll
mine's
come off.
usually in the summertime because the ground is dry and I don't like to drag wood out of the bushes in the winter. It's a lot more work. I've done that with firewood. So.
What finishes on there?
I just use wipe on poly for all my pieces, and I'll go 10 coats. But I'll have to try that be-all, that, what is it?
Be-all.
That bubble, yeah, and see how much shinier I can get. Like, and I know some of the wipe on poly, like with your wood, it's some of the wood doesn't want to suck into the wipe on. There's like some spots.
Well, in the
it
rural,
just
we
does
get
not.
that situation because of the orientation of the fibers.
Yeah, and I tried putting, you know, to fill these marks on the side here. I tried to take the green felt marker, and but then I tried to rub it off, or clean it up, and it didn't come off. So I'm stuck with the kind of defect in green.
What else have we got there? A couple, 3, 4 bowls?
I think that's the last one, that's probably me. Okay, I brought 3 different bowls here that all have a different finish on them. I'm still finding my way as to what I like and what works best. The one I have here, it's Osage orange with a Purple Heart lid. We're asking about Purple Heart. Well, I finished it with just a tried and true wood finish you buy at the Valley, among other places, but sanded it to probably about 600 and thought it turned out quite well in terms of smoothness of the finish. That's the first one. Next one is a maple burl that I put some segmented brickwork in the center of, and I used, no, I haven't heard anyone use this yet, as I used a gloss armor seal on this with just used a foam brush on the lathe, had it turning until it settled, and probably got about 8 to 10 coats on that. And the last one here, another take on adding some brickwork or segmented work into a center of a piece of myrtle wood, and again probably sanded this down to about 600, and I used the be-all system on this one here, so seemed to turn out fairly well as well. So, there's it.
It's a nice feature. Yes, I
Fill out the right form.
I don't try that. Because that looks sharp. It does. Okay, for try.
Is that it?
Yeah.
How long do you need for your?
Have we got, did they make coffee tonight?
Okay, we're gonna save Jeff's inside out turning for next week, because by the time we get cleaned up, it'll be time for it. So thank you to everybody who brought pieces out. It's quite a cross section of finishes.
Yeah. That's a really good idea, but segment of rooms here.
Yeah, I haven't been doing it very long, but it was just one of the things that somehow stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Once he gets a teeny tiny little segment. How many in a room?
4 or 40, I mean.
Yeah, you better, 4, all right. Don't believe that.
Nerves. Yeah, I know, that was a lot of fun to do those up, I'll tell you, and make those rings. I just,
Did they make coffee? Well, that's what I've done. Did he make coffee tonight?
No,
okay.
he had found
yeah. Well, I don't know, I thought somebody might jump on me about grain direction and everything else, so I think they're small enough that I might make out okay. I only did this a few months ago, so. I think with the armor seal, it's sealed, so any